I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, we're here with another episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and I've got an amazing warrior here today. Good friend of mine for over the last 5 years, Randy Sablich, and I'll get you a little bit more information on him before we launch into this episode 11 of Warrior versus Zombie. But first, if you've just joined us on Warrior versus Zombie for the first time, or maybe you need a reminder of why you're here, let me talk a little bit about Warrior versus Zombie and where we're going to go on this journey. So, as warriors, we know that success is a journey, it's not a destination. We have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, really any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have a unique value and vision that goes generations into the future. And today we're going to talk to Randy Sablich. Again, Randy, he is a true warrior in every sense of the word. From my perspective, he's the CEO of R. Sablich and Associates, and he's continuing as CEO his 40 years of success in helping people and businesses grow. He's predominantly focused on underperforming businesses by helping them bring new products and services to market and or increase market share. He began his warrior journey as a mechanical engineering and metallurgy student, and after graduation spent his first 15 years at Grumman Aerospace, after which he was a VP and general manager roles at General Defense, GT Government Systems, GT Video On Demand, Dynamics Research Corporation, and Metagraphics, where he ultimately became a CEO and board member. And he began his consulting journey at Advanced Core Concepts as a VP of Operations, which led to him founding Arlington Associates in Massachusetts, which he ultimately moved to Texas in 2015 and spun off R. Sablich and Associates, where he generously works with entrepreneurs and warriors from all types and sizes of business, enabling them to identify and capitalize on opportunities for growth. So without any further ado, let me welcome Randy Sablich, and let's check in, see how you're doing, Randy.
Well, Dave, thanks very much for the opportunity to be your guest on Warrior versus Zombie. As I listen, you did a great job, by the way, on my background. Nothing out of place. I know when we talked about that, when you're 72 years old and you've been working for your entire life, it's sometimes frightening to look back at all those years. And because I didn't tell you about the things that I didn't accomplish, but I am proud of the many things that I did accomplish. So it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah, and it is actually, that's an interesting thing. We have selective memory. One of the things I heard thinking about the warrior mindset and the things that we've gone through in our lives, doesn't matter. The more history we have, to either remember or forget. And interestingly enough, one of the interesting facts is it says there was a psychology article in Psychology Today not too far back that basically said 50% of what we remember in our history wasn't even true. So our mind is a funny thing, and I think it gets funnier as we get older. So I love the fact that you have been on this journey, and I love the fact, Randy, that I want to tell you this in the check-in, is that I admire the fact that you mentioned your age, so I can mention it again. At 72 years old, you still have a life purpose, you're still moving forward, you're still learning every day, and you're doing a lot of things. I see you almost every week, sometimes multiple times a week. So I can tell you from a firsthand standpoint that even through all this craziness we've been going through, that you continue to learn, you continue to be a vital part of the communities that you're in. So I appreciate that.
Well, I have a strong faith in God, and He's had a plan for me my whole life. He's guided and directed me in so many ways, and He still is. And He doesn't always tell me in advance where He's taking.
Well, it's a journey, and like I say, it's if we knew every step that he was going to take us on, we might not keep moving forward. But but as warriors, we power through, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. So anything in particular that you dealt with, today? I mean, are you? I know you've had some challenges, and we can even talk about that in the next segment a little bit about your story, how you got to hear some of the things you've overcome, and how you got to be where you are today. But anything in particular on your mind today that?
Well, as I think, I mentioned to you as we were just chatting before we started the interview, I had my physical today with my primary care physician. You know that I had some pretty invasive spinal surgery last September. And in spite of the results of that, my primary was really impressed. I've lost 50 pounds. My blood pressure is down. All my vitals are great. So in spite of 72 years old, I'm doing well. And my brain's still there. At least I think it is. There are some that may argue that. But I feel good. I feel good about my life, and I feel good about my situation. I feel good about the people that I surround myself with, or those that allow me to surround them with me.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Well, congratulations on that good report from the doctor. I know that, as you know, we both are on a health and wellness journey, trying, maybe starting from different points or being at different points. But it's encouraging to me to hear, even through the stuff we've been going through, can be so stressful. Yeah. And it can really take us off of our game, not just in our business, but in our health and our not just our mental health, not just the worry and the stress of, okay, am I going to get sick? All the stuff that we're constantly bombarded with in our daily lives these days. But it's encouraging to me that you're able to keep that positive perspective, and it's obviously manifested in your life. You have weathered quite a health storm within the last year, and yeah, you're looking great. You're sounding great. Appreciate that good piece of news there. So,
and you and I both know there's people in our groups, and I won't mention names, but people who have equally, if not greater, positive mental attitude, and it's those kinds of people that I tend to stay closest to, because we feed on each other, and we're good for each other from that perspective.
Well, that shows your experience, Randy, as a warrior, because what is the saying that you're usually going to be the average or the mean of the 5 people you surround yourself with at any given point in time. So
good point.
So our future tends to get defined by it. That's why I'm proud to call you as a friend, and I encourage. Likewise. You're an encouragement to me. So, okay, so that's actually a good check-in point. We'll just, I think we'll leave it there, because I really want to, you're like me, we've got a lot of history. So our stories can be a little longer than some of the ones that are maybe just getting started, but I want to give you enough time in the first segment here to just kind of tell me your story, tell you how you got to be where you are today, and how it all started. I always love to hear the origin story. I always love to hear how somebody got on the path, because mine wasn't necessarily something that I planned. It's just kind of a cool thing. So in the next segment, we'll do that. But for now, let's hear a little of Ricky Jean Wright. We'll take a break, and we'll be back with Randy Sablich and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher, while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race.
All right, we're back with Warrior versus Zombie and Randy Sablich, and nice check-in session. Really good news. Wellness and health is a good thing, and we're glad to share that. But Randy, I want to talk to you. I know a lot about your story, but I really want you to share kind of your journey from where you started to here, and how you got to be where you are with R. Sablich and Associates, and how this journey that you've been on from all kinds of different kind of responsibilities and different roles, and I'm sure challenges and successes, and we tend to maybe not at least consciously think a lot about the challenges, but I want to hear those too. And the successes we selectively bring to our conscious. The problem is the challenges are usually in our subconscious, and they tend to affect things that we do. So it's good to be aware of those as well. So tell us a little bit about your story, Randy.
Well, I'm going to do the thing that they tell you in LinkedIn never to do, which is to go all the way back. But I think all the way back sets the stage for what happened. So I'll give you a little bit of my history. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Moved out to Long Island when I was 5 years old. My father tells me we moved because the kids in the neighborhood kept beating me up and stealing my bicycle, and he wanted to get away from that. So we moved out to Levittown area. I was a typical teenager. I mowed lawns. I cleaned pools to make money. I didn't get an allowance. I grew up a Christian. My father was a Catholic. My mother was a Lutheran. We'd go to church every Sunday. We'd go to church with my mother because she was the Lutheran. And my father believed that the children should be raised in the religion of the wife, the mother. And he would sneak out to the Catholic church across the street because he was excommunicated, because he married out of the faith. But I grew up as a Christian. And this played heavily in my entire faith. It was strong, and it got me through many difficult times, and I've maintained that faith pretty much unwaveringly throughout my entire life and my career. So I went through my early school ages, and I was very, very fortunate in that they built a brand new high school, and it had a technical component. And I thought I wanted to be an engineer, and they had this thing called mechanical design and metallurgy, 3 periods a day. So I actually went to school 2 periods more than everybody else did. I guess you would say I was a dork, but I was a happy dork. So when I became a senior, I called him the professor, but he was the teacher. We had to do a senior project, and he said, "Randy, we have this piece of equipment called a Unitron high-temperature metallograph." Shortly said it was to watch grain growth of metals at high temperatures under vacuum. Trouble was, it didn't work. It was donated by Unitron, and he said, "Your project is to fix it." So I played with it. I read the manuals, I looked at the schematics. I did this, I did that. And without boring you with all the gory details, I managed to get it to work. So my teacher was happy. I was happy, got good accolades. One day he got a call from the principal's office. And the principal said, "We got somebody from Grumman on the phone. And apparently they found out from Unitron that you have a functioning metallograph, and theirs doesn't work, and they'd like you, the teacher, to please tell them what you did." And he said to the principal, "Well, we can help you maybe, but I didn't do it. I had a student that did it." So I went down to the principal's office, probably my only first time, believe it or not, because I wasn't one of those kids. And got on the phone with these people from Grumman, and they explained their situation, and I asked, as I do with you, I asked a lot of questions. And I offered a few suggestions, and I said, "How about suggest you try this, try that," and left the call. I was happy. It seemed like it went well. About a week or so later, the teacher got a call back from Grumman, and they said, "We want you to tell that student that we did what he said, and it works now, and it didn't work before." So that by itself was just a feel-good story. But the next part is my guidance counselor said, every year we get a request from Grumman to offer up potential seniors for scholarship, and we never seem to find anybody interested. And he didn't know anything about the call or the project. He said, I think you should apply. So I did. Well, it turns out that the guy that I was talking to on the phone call was one of the people on the deciding committee. And of course I get this story afterwards, when he saw my name, without further ado, he said, "Give him the scholarship, hire him, we need him. He'll make a great engineer." And so that was kind of history. I wound up with a all expense paid 4 years of college, a job every summer, great jobs, different job every summer. And over the first 3 years and going to engineering school, lo and behold, I realized I did not want to be an engineer. I won't go into the details, but it was just not for me. So I asked my counselor, my advisor at Grumman, can you give me something different in my last year? So he did. He put me in what they called contracts. Contracts was where you met with customers, potential customers, and listened to what their needs were. Sometimes they would write a request for proposal. Sometimes they didn't. Meet with the engineers and say, how can we solve their problem? I would write the proposal with help from them and other people, and oftentimes we won. And I really like that. And when I graduated college, I got an offer in that department. And that was the beginning of my career. I worked 15 years for Grumman. I worked my way up the management chain. I got promoted to the youngest director in the company. This is not, corporate director, but departmental director. But I told my advisor, who was the VP GM, the exec VP, I said, John, I want to be a VP before I turn 40. He said, Randy, it's not going to happen. He said, you're already the youngest director. This is an old man's company. You're just not going to make. I said, well, John, I just want to let you know. I respect you. I understand that. But if an opportunity comes along, I'm gone. He said, you do what you got to do, my son. And that was the kind of relationship I had with him. Well, wouldn't you know, not too long after that, I got a call from a headhunter company in Florida. They were looking for a VP general manager. It was a technology-based company. They had just been recently acquired, and they needed somebody to help turn it around. And I went down for an interview. The CEO of the corporate owner, his first question to me was, Randy, have you ever fired anybody? Yeah. Can you fire half the people in this company in the first 30 days? I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, that's what we need to do. We're overstaffed and underfunded, and we're going to have to make some adjustments. And I said, well, if you think that's what needs to be done, then I can do it. And they hired me. My wife and I moved to Florida, Clearwater, Florida, worked at that company for 3 years, figured out what some of the issues were. Previous owner kind of really messed the place up. The president of the company was also new. He and I became great friends, and just seemed to really work out. He left, and he called me about 6 months later and said, hey, Randy, you want to do it again? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I've just taken over a company in Massachusetts, and I really could use your help. I think you're the right guy. And I asked my wife, do you want to move to Massachusetts? She said, oh, yeah. So we moved to Massachusetts, and I ran that company for a while. What we didn't know was it was bought, I won't mention the name, but it was bought by a foreign company, Israeli company. And the people who were the owners of the company that got bought out didn't get what they were promised. And so they really weren't happy, and they weren't happy with us, and they didn't work well together. And that was kind of a difficult situation. But I need to digress for a second. I had to go to Israel to present the findings of the company and what we were doing to the board of directors. And I got friendly with the chairman's secretary. And I said, okay, I need something in Israeli, Hebrew, whatever the name of the language is, something that I can say that will settle them down a little bit with this guy from New York. And I said, somebody's going to sneeze. What would you say in Hebrew to somebody who sneezes? And she said, la briut. So, okay, got la briut, la briut, la briut. Great. Go to the board meeting. I had my slides. I'm about halfway through my slide deck. And of course, I'm speaking in English. And in my earpiece, I can hear the Hebrew. And then, of course, when they say something in Hebrew, I hear it in English. Somebody sneezes. And I, without even thinking, say la briut. There's silence in the room. They all look at each other, and they all started laughing. That was the icebreaker. And from then on, the meeting went well. So sometimes just little things can really make a big difference in building a relationship. So, I moved around a little bit. I worked for Grumman, as I said, for 15 years. I worked for this company in Massachusetts for a while. I got recruited to be a VP GM of an acquisition in Massachusetts. They made infrared measuring devices. And then I went to go to Dynamics Research Corporation, a company that I had targeted some time ago. I knew some of the people there. I was offered a VP GM of a local division and ran that for 3 years. And then the CEO said, look, Randy, he got to know me by then. He said, we're going to sell the company. And this company that I'm going to ask you to run, if we sell the company, nobody's going to want to buy that. And it's been with us for over 40 years. And these people, this is the only job they've ever had. And I don't want them to all get laid off when they close the company. So I want you to do what you can to grow this business in the next 3 years and then sell it. I did that. And I sold it to a couple of private equity guys, and they made me the CEO of the company. And I had a fun time. I'll tell you a quick story. You know I always carry a book around with me to take notes in. And I developed a habit. It's called The Daytimer or Time Design. Those two in it was a big, heavy leather book. So the first day that I showed up at this company in Florida, I had my book and I called it All Hands Meeting. When everything quieted down, I slammed the book on the desk. And that got everybody's attention. And I said, see this book? Obviously they did. And I said, the answers to fixing the problems in this company and growing this business are not in this book. They're in this room. And I think that really made all the difference in the world, because I wound up with an extremely, unlike the company that was owned by the Israeli firm, I wound up with an extremely cooperative audience. We did have to lay off a few people, but it was a great organization. We had a lot of fun and did well down there. So I don't know how much more you want to go into, but my career has been, I'm sure, as we were talking before the call, we tend to forget a lot of the not so good times.
Well, let me ask you, Randy, before we end this segment, I'd like to kind of hear the move. I think you hit on the opportunity where you were kind of more in a consultative role, but then the Arlington Associates that basically has become our Sablich and Associates now. And
oh, sure.
Just kind of how that happened, because that's what really. I mean, you moved from Massachusetts then to Texas, and I've known you since you were here, and you've been a warrior here. But I've known you as a business growth consultant. I've known you as a friend, as somebody who can help with leadership responsibilities. But tell me about how that transpired. I mean,
so the company that we sold this division of DRC to were what they call themselves growth equity. They're private individuals spending their own money. And I worked for them for 3 years in that role. They were extremely happy. And they called me, we had lunch together, and they said, you've done a great job. You've been adequately rewarded, all the rest of that. But we think it's time that we put in our own people. And I said, makes sense. And so I had a severance agreement. I got equity in the company. And I left, and I started, at that time, Arlington Associates, appropriately named after the street that we lived on, Arlington Street. And the first call that I made was to a business associate of mine who had a private company and was doing a lot of proposals and looking for new business. And I said, Jim, I'm out on my own. I started my own consultancy. Do you think, you may have some need? He says, I can't believe you called. I really need help. We're trying to win a big piece of opportunity, and I know you know how to write proposals and you know how to lead people and manage people. I'm willing to pay whatever your rate is. And so I worked for him for 9 months as a consultant. And then my wife and I decided that, that was good. We were done. And it was time to sort of pack up the tent and maybe retire. And so we moved to Florida. No, we stayed in Massachusetts. Sorry. When you get old, you forget stuff. It all gets confusing. We stayed in Massachusetts. And when we then eventually moved, we moved to Texas because my oldest son lived down here. We wanted to be closest to him. And I got a phone call from another friend who said, hey, helping out a company, president, but I need a VPGM. And would you like to take on a consultative role that will allow you to commute back and forth as you see fit between Warner Robins Air Force Base and Clearwater, Florida. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And then I decided it was time that I really wanted to just really consult. And so I decided it was time to rename the company not after a street, but after me. And I started our Sablich and Associates doing consulting. And that was hard for a long time because now I wasn't, working for somebody else. I was totally on my own in a strange and foreign land that spoke strange and foreign languages. And I must say that I struggled for a while. But as I told you earlier, I had very strong faith. I prayed to God a lot with direction. What direction do you want me to go? And, the message that I got was stay the course and you'll figure it out. And I got a couple of consulting gigs here and there. And then I gravitated towards, I really don't want to help small to mid-sized companies like I used to. I really want to help small entrepreneurs because, a lot of people have picked a job and they've been doing it for a long time, but they may have no formal training. They don't have any business training. They haven't experienced anything other than the plumbing or the HVAC business or the printing business or whatever. Not that that's bad. They're not the true entrepreneurs, but they oftentimes can't see the forest from the trees when it comes to, I really want to grow my business, or I really want to think about something else. And that's when I decided, I wanted to help people. Again, the Christian in me wants to do whatever I can to help people. And that's the direction that I turned. And as you know, I started offering my services at Richardson Plano Networkers and several other network groups. And it took a little bit, but it's been catching on. And I'm really enjoying it. And I'm having a lot of fun. And nobody's fired me yet.
Well, we're going to get a chance to talk a little bit about where you are and where I kind of know where you're at more than I know where you came from, but I have heard a little bit of that as we go. Let me ask you this. We're going to end this segment here in about 2 minutes or whatever time you need to take. But I know the kind of warrior you are, and I know you don't focus on the challenges, but you've made reference to some challenges and some things. What would you say is the one or two biggest zombies that you've overcome on your journey? You've obviously been blessed. You have a strong degree of faith. I'm not suggesting that any of these zombies trump your faith in God or your positive attitude. But anything come to mind as far as?
Sure. I'll tell you a quick story. Back when I worked at Grumman, my wife lived on a canal and her boss lived across the street on a canal. So I would go over there occasionally when I was visiting her and have a beer with him, sit on his front porch. And he knew me pretty well. And I said, we had this discussion, and I said, you know what, Dick, his name was Dick Sanchez. I said, just give me a group of half a dozen really, really smart, energetic, high performers, and I could do anything. I could turn this company around overnight. This was Grumman. He smiled. I think he didn't say whippersnapper, but something along those lines, young buck. He said the truth to success in life is not creating success with superstars, but it's taking average people and molding them and supporting them and challenging them. And if you can do that, you will always succeed. And that stuck with me my whole life. And so so in answer to your question, my biggest zombie was, and still every once in a while, is my pride. I want to do it my way, and I want to do it myself. And it's taken me a long time to get over a lot of that.
Well, that's actually a big zombie. I think you're the first person that's really come right out with that zombie. But I know in my own life that is, if I'm really honest with myself, and being self-observant and self-aware is one of those things that is an asset as much as hard as it can be at times. And that pride, that ego, that not wanting to admit that you can't do something or not want to take the challenges is many warriors wrestle with that one. So
you have to fail a few times before you realize, that you're not perfect.
Right. Well, we're definitely not perfect. All right. Well, this is a great place to end This segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Randy Sablich, we're going to listen to a little more of Ricky Jean Wright. When we come back, we're going to talk about where Randy is right now and some of the things that he's doing, why he's doing what he's doing now, what value he sees himself providing to those that come on his path, and if anything were possible, where would we go from here? So with that, we're going to take a break and listen to a little bit more of It's Not the Getting There with Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back.
How many people know your name? One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
All right, we're back with next segment, the third segment, the one where we get to talk about Randy and where he's at today. We got to hear his story about where he's come from and how he got to be here and some of the things that he's learned along the way. Now we're going to talk about, Randy, where you're at, why you're here, why you're doing, what you're doing today, what unique value you feel you're bringing into the lives and the businesses of those people you encounter. And then if anything were possible, where would this journey take you? So with that, Randy, come on back to me. Tell me something good.
So this is a hard question to answer for me, because the question is where am I going? And the answer, quite frankly, is I'm not exactly sure. But I want to continue to add value. I've never been a hobby guy. I don't play golf. I used to, but I played at golf, and I was terrible. I don't build models. I tried coloring. I went to an art class, and I'm not very good at that. My life has been my family and my job. Probably not atypical of people in our bracket. But I want to continue to add value. And what I find is, as people approach me with my offering, to help them, they're sincere. I mean, they enjoy what they do. So far, only one person has said they really would like to sell their business. But all of them really are looking to enhance their business, to grow their business. And they know that the answer is probably not just simply sell more of what they sell now or do more of what they do now. They want to look at other avenues akin to what they're doing. And so back to what I said earlier in this discussion is it's all about asking questions. I don't know the answer to their question, but I think I know the questions that get their answer. And so I spend most of my time having a discussion. Like I think I told you I'm working with a gentleman who's writing a book. I kind of really tore his book to shreds, not intentionally. And I said, you really want me to be totally honest? And he said, absolutely. And so we did. I spent 2 hours on the phone with him. And after I was all done, I knew he had somebody else doing a similar kind of review. I said, what did the other guy say? And he paused for a moment. And we were doing on Zoom. He looked into the camera and he said exactly the same thing you said. So in a sense, that felt good, not because I was telling him he was all messed up, but that I was on the right track and that he agreed that we were on the right track. So I like helping people. It's part of my Judeo-Christian beliefs, helping others. God gave me skills. He gave me a brain. He gave me intellect. Gave me talents. And I don't want to just waste them. I don't want to, just, like I said, I tried painting. This is what I've done my whole life. So I want to stick with that. But the other things that I want to do is I want to do more volunteer work, non-business work. I don't want to get involved where I'm a marketing guy for a nonprofit organization, any of those kinds of things. I really just want to help in the two places that I've targeted. One is Rotary. And there are a couple of members of our group that are actively involved in Rotary, and they're sponsoring me, and I've been to a bunch of meetings. And I'm really impressed with the people and some of the projects that they've done. and it seems different than anything that I've ever done, but it seems incredibly well worthwhile. And then the other one is the Veterans Center of North Texas. When I first came here, I did some volunteer work for a while, and then I got distracted with a bunch of other things. And now they've solved a lot of their problems, but they're moving into a different realm now, and they've got new challenges. So I'm working through a white paper based on some information that they've given me on how to reformulate what they're doing to be better supportive of their missions and their goals. So, I mean, that's kind of the direction that I'm going, is to just, for as long as God keeps me on this earth and keeps my brain active, doesn't turn me into a bowl of mush, I'm going to try to continue to help people.
That's actually incredible. I really, when you kind of come to this place where you wanted to contribute and that you really realize that you do have a lot of value, and I'm sure that there's going to be opportunities. I'm kind of in the same place. There'll be opportunities where somebody you will monetize that, or people may say, "Hey, I really," because,
and that's okay.
Most people we run into, at least the ones I continue to run into or hang around with, are very high integrity. Most warriors are, in fact, all warriors that I think are worthy are ones that have very high integrity. If you invest in people, you may not, it's not transactional necessarily. You may not get back immediately a paycheck for what you do, but your willingness to contribute. And that's the thing, is people need to realize that folks like Randy, people that are in our network that have the experience and have been down a road, not necessarily the road they're on, we don't know all the answers, but we definitely know the questions to ask. And that was, I was smiling when you were talking, because I had exactly that same experience. I walked into a meeting, I was helping, somebody wanted me to consult. I was doing one thing, and they said, well, let me consider it. I'm not sure, but I could use the money right now. This was a time when I was going through some pretty tough times. And I went in and we had the conversation. I was asking questions and commenting, and obviously there was more there than they were looking for. And I ended up in the office with the two CEOs, and they're saying, and I said almost exactly what you said, which is brilliant, really, is just, I don't know all of the answers, but because of where I've come from and what I've done, I know the questions to ask. And even if I can't give you the answers, I can either tell you what questions and point you in the direction of people that can give you the answers, or you can go off and get them. And that's extremely valuable, especially to the young entrepreneurs and the small business owners that we serve, and I say serve, in Richardson Plano Networkers and other groups. You run across the Rotaries or the Chambers or whatever. These guys, some of these folks are successful in their own right, but they can benefit from you. And the fact that you're willing to put yourself out there to offer that, sometimes it seems too good to be true. And I can tell you, when Randy says, okay, I'm going to help you and there's no charge, or I say that, people are sometimes reluctant because they can't believe that's true. They can't believe at some point they're not going to have to write you a big check. And that's not the criteria under which you're building the relationship. And I think that's beautiful. And so we're going to come back. I'm going to go ahead and we'll bring this segment to a close. And Randy, you've covered a lot of stuff. You've learned a lot of stuff. You've shared a lot of things, either directly or indirectly, that warriors here can benefit from. And when we come back, I want to hear one or two. Every warrior I've asked, when I said, give me one, they gave me at least two. But things that, if anything, we would take away from this talk that you and I have had today, from anything that we want. So we'll come back. We're going to hear another little snippet of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. We'll take a break, and we'll be back with Warrior versus Zombie and Randy Sablich.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see.
All right, and now we're back, and we're in what I call the land the plane segment. So we've heard a lot about where Randy's come from. We've heard a lot about where he's at and what's important to him and some of his zombies and challenges. But now I want to give us, Randy, if anything were possible, can you give us the 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever you have, items that if we take away anything from this podcast, what would they be?
I have 4. I anticipated this question, David. And the first one probably doesn't surprise you. It's trust in God or your higher power. What has kept me going through thick and thin has been my faith. And I'm not the best Christian in the world. I talk to God a lot, and he answers me. He doesn't speak to me, because then I'd probably be crazy if I thought I heard God. But trust in God. Just trust. The second one is listen. And we've heard that from Scott Schilling, something about you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And there's really a lot to be said to that. It took me a long time to learn that. Even not too long ago, I was still trying to talk and not listening to what other people said. But listening is a skill that will really help you no matter what you're doing. The third one I learned pretty early in my time at Brumman. We were going out talking to other companies and trying to get in to see executives. And someone once said to me, say hello to the little people, the receptionist, the custodian. Just do it, because you will learn so much and you will wind up building. You don't do it because it's your sales and marketing toolkit. You do it because it makes them feel good and it makes you feel good. And it just makes life all around much better for everybody. And the fourth one, which is the hardest to do for some people, but it's pretty good for me, and it's smile. Just smile. Life is good, even in COVID-19. Got to do some takeout from some restaurants we hadn't taken out from before, and my wife's made some interesting meals that we haven't had in a bit. Just smile, and it just makes a huge difference. So trust in your higher power, listen more than you talk, say hi to the little people, and smile.
That is awesome, Randy. That was an awesome list of 4 things. And I'm not sure I've heard all of those, but I believe all those are truth and worthy takeaways from your story, as well as takeaway from anybody's story. Knowing the little people, that is one that I think is, not that they're all not powerful. Obviously, I'm connected to my higher source. I'm connected to God. All the truth, anything that I say that resonates as truth comes from one source, as I say, and it's not me. It's coming from God. So I'm with that. But this really not being a respecter of persons, but just being honest and authentic with everybody that God brings into your path and loving them. It's a good message for this time, right? Loving them for who they are, for the fact that that's what we're supposed to do, and letting them know that you appreciate them. And that's one of the reasons why, I make an effort every time I can, before I end any meeting where somebody has shared with me, like you've shared with me right now, is to thank them, to let them know how much I appreciate their time, because their time, it doesn't matter what their station in life or what the job they have is, right? Their time is priceless, just like yours.
Yep.
They're human. So it's a beautiful thing that's a lesson that we all need to remind ourselves of. So Randy, I really, really, really want to thank you for sharing your story. I know you don't think it necessarily is that interesting, but it was very interesting to me. I'm sure it's going to be interesting to those listening to your story. And there's a lot of people on the journey that you've been on. Maybe not the exact, but they're at a place where you are, and you're gonna help those folks. And I know that, and I believe that. So those warriors, that have had the corporate career, that have migrated and they're doing their things on their own, and now they're trying to decide, do I retire? And to me, retirement, by the way, as you've heard me say, is doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want, and it's not doing nothing. And I came to your conclusion after 6 months of trying to play golf and hang out with my kids after I retired, that I realized that I wasn't good enough at golf, and my kids didn't want to have me around that much. So I had to go and go back to my life purpose and doing what I can. And that's what you're saying. And that's a beautiful thing. Randy, let me ask you this. How can the folks listening to this podcast, how can we follow up with you? How can we take you up on the offer? You'll help, if we can be part of your network and have you help us with our challenges.
Sure. I mean, there's a variety of ways to LinkedIn, of course. I'm on LinkedIn. My profile is, right now, I'm kind of redoing it a little bit because I've refocused it, not as a result of this, but as a result of just assessing where I am. So LinkedIn, email, randy@sablich.net, randy@sablich.net. That's my personal and business email. So LinkedIn and that. I do have a website, sablichandassociates.com. And those are pretty much it. And I do give out my phone number, but I don't think I'll give it on Zoom, if that's okay with you.
No, that's fine. In fact, people can reach out to you via LinkedIn. I know you're active on LinkedIn. They can message you or go to your website. So, yeah, that's fine. And so, yeah, it's been great. Really appreciate you taking this time to share with my audience. I know that they're really going to appreciate hearing your story, hearing your journey, and understanding the things the challenges that you've overcome, as well as the value that you've given us in your thoughts as we go forward. So we're going to land the plane with this episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And just in case you have just found us, or we're on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, from Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts to any major podcasting, iHeartRadio. I love to be able to just say, Alexa, play Warrior versus Zombie on iHeartRadio, and have her start playing my latest episode. So however you find us, please share this episode. This is episode 11. So we've got other warriors that we've talked to from all different walks of life. And if you have an interest in being a guest on Warrior versus Zombie, just reach out to me at myvisionwarrior.com, or on any social site, Twitter, Facebook, or all at myvisionwarrior. So with that, we're going to call it an episode. And again, thank you, Randy. It's been awesome.
My pleasure.
And let's listen to the final segment of It's Not the Getting There with Ricky Jean Wright.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.